It's 2 p.m. A very good afternoon and welcome to Market View. This is the Monday edition. Thank you for tuning in. It's the 5th of November 2024. My name is Lungilele Makakulatu. Watches on our YouTube page, Eswatini TV. Coming up on the program today, Senators will unpack the public debt figures which were released by the Ministry of Finance. They show that as of 30th of September 2024, total public debt stood at 34.54 billion malangeni, which is an equivalent of 39.79% of the gross domestic product. This is composed of the domestic debt amounting to 19.18 billion and external debt amounting to 15.36 billion malangeni, which is equivalent to 17.70% of GDP compared to the previous quarter, which stood at 33.96 billion. Sibia will connect with us to further explain these figures. For our lead story today, Nedbank has launched the Pocket Pause meant to bring cheaper payment solutions for small and medium enterprises around the country. Let's go straight to business news. In our first story, the governor of the Central Bank of Eswatini, Dr. Phil Mnisi, has detailed the resolutions of discussions of the International Monetary Fund meeting held in the United States of America a week ago. Speaking during a press briefing last week, the governor said Eswatini stands to benefit, especially on the reduction of the surcharge service fees.
The governor says some of the resolutions from the International Monetary Fund annual meetings was the reduction of the surcharge service fees, which have been causing a major outcry from different countries. He says the savings from these surcharge fees can be used as buffers or for other projects for those countries. He continues to say that whatever line of credit that Eswatini had along these lines will benefit.
Begune what they call a surcharge kusho ukuthi ngale magama uma uboleke imali ku IMF bekuba nema service fees bekuba nema charges lamakhulu bekusolo kunesikhala ukuthi awu lama charges lawa makhulu abanga lesikwelede sisekhame. IMF ithathe ipolicy ukuthi iwahlise lawo ma surcharges lawo lekusho ukuthi ke lamave laboleke imali ku IMF atawukhona kuphefumula asangayisebenzisa leyo mali leyo as buffers noma aphinze ende lamanye ama projects kulawo mave lawo so livela kangwane whatever line of credit lesinayo lefolisha kuleyo category leyo itawu benefit. Bese sekuba khona nalelinye indlela yekuboleka ku IMF liyendeka ukuthi kube lula ku access imali ikakhulu mawutayisebenzisa ku delisha naletinto tehlakalo bo climate change ku dry kwemadamu nathi tangcotho lesitibonako letendeka ngelanga linye leto timali leto so ungakhona usheshe ungene fastelweni la ka IMF uthithole masishane ngale magama iIMF yenta ukuthi nyalo lama member states akhone kuyi accessa nathi ke as one of the 191 members siya benefita kuloko.
Dr. Mnisi says that now Africa has a third chair in the International Monetary Fund Board. He continues to say this will give the continent more representation. For Market View, Nelson Langamandla, Vominkosi Nzinisa Mbabane.
Nedbank has launched the Pocket Pause meant to bring cheaper payment solutions for small and medium enterprises around the country. This product was launched by the bank's managing director, Fikile Ngosi, during a press briefing at the bank's headquarters in Mbabane, where she stated that owning the gadget costs about 500 malangeni.
At Nedbank, we believe that small business is the livelihood of Eswatini, of the Eswatini economy, and the key to economic growth and job creation. As a bank, we regard ourselves as an important stakeholder in unlocking this growth, not only in terms of providing access to finance and enabling transactional flows, but also in equipping small business owners with the tools and knowledge to make better business decisions and choices on a day-to-day basis. As a caring bank, we acknowledge that businesses face various challenges on a day-to-day basis. That is why we continuously strive to provide the banking solutions that add value to our small and medium enterprises for sustainability of their businesses and to boost economic growth. The economic climate has been a very turbulent one in recent years, as we all know, and all businesses have had to adapt to so many changes within our different operating environments. In the business world, it has been a matter of adapt or die, particularly with our SMEs. Coupled with that, this has been the ever-changing advancements in technology, where consumers are demanding more and more banking solutions and products that are digital and offer security and convenience at the same time. It is those entrepreneurs who can easily change their way of thinking and adopt new approaches to dealing with these business challenges and their customers, and that are managing to survive and grow their enterprises. As a bank, we are delighted to offer our support to small businesses through bringing banking solutions that offer that much needed agility, convenience, and more importantly, cash security for small businesses. These solutions are ideal for businesses such as informal traders, like our market vendors, beauty salons, public transport operators, and delivery businesses, to mention just a few. The two products are also perfect for the sole traders who are doing side hustles, as their customers will no longer be forced to carry cash around, and they are ideal for those spur-of-the-moment cases where a customer does not have actual cash with them but wants to purchase whatever product or service being offered at that point in time. They can easily tap with their bank card on the device, on the SME mobile phone as well. And the cherry on top is that these products or these solutions are available not only to SMEs with Nedbank accounts, but also to non-Nedbank SMEs.
It's 8 minutes after 2, and that's it for our business news. We'll go for an ad break. When we come back, we are joined by Sanele.
Be sure to catch Business Watch every Wednesday between 2 p.m. to 3 p.m., where we feature the latest updates on business news, market trends, and exclusive interviews with industry leaders, as well as insights on emerging small and medium enterprises in the commercial sector. Business Watch, your business leader.
Welcome back. You're still tuned in to Market View. This is the Monday edition. Last week, the Minister of Finance, Neil Rackenberg, tabled the quarterly report of the Ministry of Finance, and it revealed that the public debt stood at 34.54 billion emalangeni. We're now connecting with Sanele Spier, in-house economist. But before we get into that, let's start with this report. Government has collected over 1 billion in taxes in the second quarter of this year, reflecting a 20% decline compared to the previous year. This is contained in the Ministry of Finance's quarterly report tabled in Parliament last week.
The quarterly report says preliminary debt figures show that as of 30 September this year, total public debt stood at 34.54 billion emalangeni, which is an equivalent of 39.79% of the country's gross domestic product. This is composed of domestic debt amounting to 19.18 billion emalangeni, which is equivalent to 22.60% of the gross domestic product, and external debt amounting to 15.36 billion emalangeni, which is equivalent to 17.70% of the GDP. Compared to the previous quarter, which stood at 33.96 billion emalangeni, total public debt has slightly increased by 581.80 million emalangeni. The report states that external debt slightly decreased from 16.10 billion emalangeni as of 30 June 2024 to 15.36 billion emalangeni as of 30 September this year. This can be attributed to a slight decrease in the implementation of capital projects as reflected in external disbursements, which amounted to 176.98 million emalangeni, and the slight appreciation of lilangeni against foreign currencies for the period under review compared to previous quarter ended 30th June 2024, which stood at 210.41 million emalangeni. The overall total disbursements indicate a decrease of about 33.343 million emalangeni from the previous quarter. The total revenue collected in the second quarter amounted to 6.003 billion emalangeni, reflecting 3% growth compared to the second quarter collection of 5.848 billion emalangeni in 2023-2024. The increase is attributed to the revenue growth in SACCO receipts, non-tax and taxes on goods and services. Total revenue portrays that 44% of the targeted annual revenue has been collected. The Minister of Finance says the exact amount collected in income taxes in the quarter amounted to 1.331 billion emalangeni, reflecting a 20% decline compared to 1.669 billion emalangeni collected in the prior year. The decline is mainly due to a decline in the collections from provisional taxes, pay-as-you-earn remittances, and other income tax. The overall income tax collection reflects a 38% of the annual target. For Market View, Nelson Langamandla, Vominkosi Nzinisa Mbabane.
Thank you for staying with us. We now connect with in-house economist analyst Bia to unpack the Minister's quarterly finance report from the Ministry of Finance. A very good afternoon, Mr. Bia. Thank you for tuning in. Just focusing on the public debt, as at 30th September 2024, it stood at 34.54 billion emalangeni. How does it reflect on the Eswatini economy?
Good afternoon, Lou, and good afternoon to the viewers at home. So what we are seeing here is we can see that public debt actually increased slightly to 39.75% of GDP. So one could still say that we are still within, feasible parameters. So that means we've not yet exceeded the amount of borrowing that we should not exceed. So what this talks to, Lou, is the fact that we do expect this external borrowing, because largely most of it is going towards financing of our capital projects. We should have hope that if all goes well, then we should expect to see that growth within the sector. And also we need to see that growth translating into tangible benefits for Eswatini. As we've been pointing out as they started, we do expect government expenditures to drive growth this year.
Yeah, so looking at the external debt, the report also reveals that it decreased from 16.10 billion as at 30th June this year. What can this be attributed to? Could it be a slight decrease in the implementation of capital projects?
So what we are seeing there is two things, Lou. It's a combination of both, the slower implementation and also the exchange rate appreciation. As you know, most of our external debt is actually paid in US dollars. And ever since that GNU formation and moving into the current period, we've seen the exchange rate jumping from 19 against the dollar to around 17 point, I think it's 17.5 today, but it's been around that region, 17.2, 17.3, 17.4, and that actually benefits us as a country when we are paying our external debt, which is dollar based or dollar denominated, because then that means we need we need a little bit less of our emalangeni to pay the debt than we would actually require had we been required to pay it at that 19.5 type kind of region. So the exchange rate gains have actually assisted us a lot in this regard.
Yeah, and also just moving on to the total revenue collected in the second quarter, Mr. Spear, which amounted to 6 billion, reflecting 3% growth compared to second quarter collection of over 5 billion in Malangeni. Could the increase be also attributed to the revenue growth in SACU receipts?
Yes, a huge chunk of those of the revenues that we've collected just as yet just are as a result of the increase in SACCO receipts, and we got a bit more money from SACCO. But one interesting dynamic when you look into the numbers, you will see that in as much as we are collecting a lot and we are moving towards being a sustainable nation, SACCO receipts still contribute quite a huge chunk of government expenditures. So right now, if you look at all collected revenues, collected revenue sources, you will see that SACCO accounts for about 66% of what we've collected to date, and that always puts us at a bit of a risky situation as a country because it's a volatile source. And then also when you look at the revenue collections, you can see, if you look at the numbers, you will see that overall we've collected right about 44% of overall revenues. And now that means we 6% in around we have a deficit of 6%. So it's those target misses that we usually worry about because they then have an implication on the cash flow of government, because when we budget, we expect the money to come in. So right now, if you've collected 44% of the money and you're already in quarter two, where we expect to have at least collected 50%, and we expect to have at least executed 50% of the government expenditures. So that tends to limit how much of a multiplier effect and how much of a growth effect we can have out of our government expenditures. So one would then probably caution to say, when we look into the way of running our expenditures as a government, we do need to improve our planning system so that we come up with cash flow projections that are a bit more realistic. Not to say the cash flows are not realistic. Yes, eventually we will raise the money, but it's a question of when do you raise the money, and you want to then tie your expenditures to that period. So what we require is that type of planning way, which is also going to take into consideration the cash flow situation, when the cash flow is going to come in, while we're also planning the expenditure. So now that would actually ensure that we are not working on the assumption that this money is going to come in quarter on quarter, and then our expenditures are also going to be quarter on quarter. So we need to be realistic in terms of timing our expenditures and timing our cash inflows. Because right now, if you look at the figures, if you look at the expenditures, one would think we are not burning as we ought to be burning. The money is not being spent as it ought to be spent. But one then should also caution that it's an issue of when they're coming and when we hope to have those expenditures.
Yeah, Mr. Spear, getting into the income taxes collected, the report reveals that in the quarter it amounted to 1.3 billion Malangeni, reflecting a 20% decline compared to 1.6 billion collected in the previous year. The report reveals that the decline is mainly due to poor collections of income taxes, provisional taxes, and also the pay-as-you-earn. How can this be resolved?
So this one is a it's a bit of a hard pill to swallow because most income taxes, if you look at pay as you earn, for example, that one is collected by companies. So that means it's ideally supposed to be relatively easy to collect. So I would also probably argue that it speaks to issues of the performance of the economy. Probably the economy is not performing as well as we thought it should be performing. And you might find that businesses are having those struggles here, and then that's why it becomes a bit, they become a bit late in paying out those taxes. So what we need to do in that case is we would expect that the Revenue Authority should work hand in hand with businesses. And we know they changed the system. And when you talk to quite a number of people out there, they do raise challenges with the new system. So one would expect that we need to ensure that we do adequate taxpayer education so that we avoid these glitches, this minor test, those test runs. So going forward in the future, when a system changes, we need to have a dry run so that we know what the implications will be before phasing out the old system. Make sure that you keep it there and only just take a few of your taxpayers to the new system and then roll it out completely and fully when you've tested all the bugs and you are sure that people understand it and it's going to be easy for people to use the system.
All right, thank you, Mr. Spear, for that explanation. Further explanation. I'll see you in a few seconds. Mr. Spear comes back after the break for today's financial market.
sabathandi ukuthi njengalokhu sivile sive sikhulume
It's 22 minutes after 2. Thank you for staying with us. Mr. Spear comes back again for today's financial market analysis. Welcome back, Mr. Spear. Let's start in the international markets. All eyes are on the U.S. elections tomorrow, and in London, in European Union, energy stocks boost London shares. Take us through international markets today.
Thank you, Lou. So, starting off in the US, that tomorrow is an elections week. And last week, Friday, we did see the non-farm payroll numbers coming in and, quite a number of, quite a bevy of economic indicators, even the inflation report came through. So what the markets are now looking to do is how do we then price in interest rate expectations, of which this week the Federal Reserve Bank will be meeting, just to try and pen out the monetary policy path in light of the new figures that are coming in terms of the stronger economic performance and also in terms of earlier on when the market started, when we started, we were hoping that, they're going to be so aggressive in terms of their interest rate hike cuts. But now when the market is positing signs of strength and the economy is positing signs of strength, now that means that has to be revisited and investors are looking into that. But when you look into what's happening, the volatility today is being driven largely by, the elections that we are waiting to see tomorrow. And if you notice, because the polls are so, they're showing that the race between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump is so tight, it's neck to neck. Usually it could go either ways, even though Kamala seems to be leading, but it's within a margin of error. So those are the uncertainties that the market is looking into, and that's what is pushing in a lot of volatility into the markets right now. But, one of the interesting things is, earnings continue to be good. We saw Amazon posting very good earnings last week, and then the expectations is we should expect those earnings to trickle into next week. And then moving into London and the overall Eurozone, as you rightly pointed out, what we are seeing happening in London is we're seeing those energy stocks pulling the market up, and then overall investor sentiments within the eurozone seem to be, on an upbeat, and that's why we're seeing Paris and overall Germany benefiting on the backdrop of those. But it's an issue of, are we going to have an overall turnaround strategy for, to deal with that ailing German economy and, the debt crisis within France, not just a crisis, but a looming crisis. There's just too much of a deficit then. So we are waiting to see how the markets are actually going to eat that in. And then also when you look into the numbers, you can see that in as much as we seem to be on an uptick today, but it's numbers that are relatively within. We are seeing the market, gaining and then selling off again, purely because there is that uncertainty around the US elections. So we should start to see the markets normalize, probably after Wednesday, once the polls have been closed and the race has been called. So that's what we should look into. And then moving on into Asia, what we're seeing in Asia again is it was relatively a good day in Asia, but we've seen a bit of losses there in Japan, with the Nikkei just losing around 1,000 points. So that comes on the background of a weakening dollar, and that means it makes those Japanese-based assets a little bit weaker. And then when you move into the mainland, the mainland is really hard at work these days with to try and get demand and production up again and trying to get to that 5% target. So we've seen that they are also mulling on further stimulus to pump into the economy, to get the economy running and probably to hit that 5% target by end of year. So right now we are at about 4.6%. And then coming into South Africa again, what we are seeing in South Africa is a bit of an uptick again, but still below that 87 mark. So what we are seeing there is, that the impact of the upcoming election has actually found its way into the South African market, contributing to the volatility therein. But we're seeing those metals just gaining on the background of a weakening dollar and a bit of uncertainty around what's going to happen tomorrow. So the metals have somehow showed the markets and insulated the markets from a further decline, and we're continuing to see that growth in South Africa. And in the domestic stock exchange, there hasn't been any change. We have not seen any change on the domestic front. And then when we move into our commodities, you will see that both gold and crude oil are actually on an increase, those futures, and that's purely because of the uncertainty around the elections. So that has actually pushed the markets to move towards a bit of hedging, moving towards gold and that precious metal. So that's why it's staying above the 2.57 mark. And then with the oil, we've seen the OPEC, which is the Organization for Petroleum Exporting Countries, just holding on and not executing a supply increase, just trying to balance the supply that we are seeing in the market with the demand. So they've pushed those plans forward, and that's why we're seeing that benefit in oil. And then also, we're seeing an increase in the rhetorics around Iran and getting ready to attack Israel even further. And, also the markets are watching those tensions in the Middle East. Coming into the currencies, what we're seeing there happening is, because of the elections in the US, we are seeing that the local currency has actually improved a bit against the dollar, purely because there is that uncertainty, and we've seen investors in the US move their money towards treasury bills. So those yields on treasury bonds are continuing to increase within the US economy. And then against the euro, we can see that there is just that muted movement there. That's purely because everyone is looking at what's happening in the US markets. And then we've seen some gains, some losses against the Japanese yen. It's probably because we are looking into the Bank of Japan also trying to prop up the Japanese yen. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mrs. Bia, for that analysis. For today's financial markets, we've come to the end of our Market View Monday episode. Thank you for tuning in. It's 29 minutes after 2. If you've just joined us, worry not. You can still watch this episode on our YouTube page, Eswatini TV. We'll see you again tomorrow at exactly 2 p.m. Enjoy the rest of your day.
without offering any proof that they're trying to steal the vote. Now, for more on what the top priorities are for each candidate, here's Kemi Knight reporting.
In his first hours as president, Joe Biden signed a record 17 executive orders. Most were reversals of Trump policies like rejoining the Paris Climate Accords or halting construction of the US-Mexico border wall. But others went a little further, like freezing student debt collection. As the outgoing vice president of the White House, Kamala Harris's first day may look a little different. She hasn't specifically discussed the signing of executive orders, but says day one will be about implementing her plan for what she calls an opportunity economy.
At the top of my list is bringing down the cost of living for you. That will be my focus every single day as president. I will give a middle-class tax cut to over 100 million Americans.
In contrast, Donald Trump has made at least 40 distinct first-day promises, telling Fox News last year he wouldn't be a dictator except for day one. In his own words, he's pledged to close the border and drill, drill, drill. He's also vowed to fire Jack Smith, the special counsel who brought 2 federal cases against him within 2 seconds. Mass deportation is also top of his list.
On day one, I will launch the largest deportation program of criminals in American history. It's going to be the largest deportation of criminals. We're going to get them out of here fast.
But legal experts say a lot of his promises fall outside the scope of a president's authority under the Constitution. Most of Trump's agenda will require sign-off or legal defense from the Justice Department, and even his vice presidential nominee, J.D. Vance, recently declared that the Attorney General would be the second most important person in government.
Now, France 24 will be covering the US elections with special editions which begin once the polls close on a Tuesday night. You will also get results, special editions throughout the day on Wednesday as those results continue to trickle in. Now, congratulations have been pouring in from Western leaders after Moldova's pro-EU president claimed victory in presidential elections. The French president and German chancellor both calling the outcome a triumph for democracy. Maya Sandu secured 55% of the vote, and late Sunday she called out the unprecedented schemes by, quote, hostile forces intended to put her rival, backed by Moscow, in office.
Moldova este învingătoare.
Moldova, you are victorious. Today, dear Moldovans, you have given a lesson in democracy worthy of being written in history books. Today, you have saved Moldova. In our choice for a dignified future, no one lost. I have heard your voice, both those who supported me and those who voted for Mr. Stoianoglu. I commit to being the president for all of you.
Now, here in France, 7 families are suing TikTok. The lawsuit against the Chinese social media company alleges that children are exposed to harmful content, which even resulted in 2 adolescents